In 1995, a small group of traders discovered something the rest of Wall Street had missed. Not a secret stock, not insider information, a structure, a shape of bet where if they were wrong, they lost a little. If they were right, they made 100 times that. They weren't smarter, they weren't luckier, they had simply learned to play a different game, one where the rules of proportion no longer applied. Most people never find this game, not because it's hidden, because it looks, from the outside, like almost nothing at all. There is a kind of logic most of us inherit without choosing it. It says, reward is proportional to risk. To gain more, you must wager more. To rise, you must first be willing to fall. It isn't wrong exactly, but it is incomplete. Because buried inside every system, markets, careers, relationships, ideas, there are moments where the usual arithmetic breaks, where a small, contained action carries consequences wildly out of proportion to its cost, where the downside is measurable and the upside is not. This is asymmetry, and it is not a trick or a loophole or the territory of the reckless. It is a principle, one of the few that genuinely separates the lives people plan from the lives they end up living. This video is about 3 of those moments, one timeless, one happening right now, one that asks nothing of your bank account, only of your identity. None of them require you to risk everything, only to see differently. The cleanest model is the options market. When a trader buys an option, they pay a small premium, a fixed known cost. In return, they gain the right but not the obligation to buy or sell an asset at a set price. If the market moves against them, they lose only that premium, nothing more. If the market moves in their favor, dramatically, unexpectedly, the return can be 10, 50, 100 times what they paid. The loss is capped, the gain is not. This is not gambling in the conventional sense. The gambler risks ruin for a chance at the jackpot. The asymmetric thinker accepts a small, defined loss, one they can absorb without damage, in exchange for exposure to an outsized upside they cannot fully predict. The key is not certainty, it is structure. The shape of the bet matters more than the odds, and once you see this shape, you begin to recognize it everywhere. In a career, in a conversation, in the quiet decision to spend 6 months learning something no one around you values yet. Around 1980, a young accountant in a mid-sized firm quietly began studying something his colleagues considered irrelevant: computer systems. Not programming, just the logic, how machines processed information, how ledgers might one day move from paper to screen. His colleagues were not stupid. They simply saw no immediate return. The cost of learning this was high in time, uncertain in payoff. A symmetric bet would not make sense, but he saw it differently. The worst case, he spends evenings learning something that never matters. He loses a few hundred hours. His life continues unchanged. The best case, the world shifts, and he is already fluent in its new language. A decade later, it shifted, and he was. This is the oldest form of asymmetric bet available to anyone, the deliberate acquisition of a skill that the present does not reward, but the future might reward enormously. The downside is time and mild irrelevance. The upside is positioning before the crowd arrives. The skill changes with every era. The structure of the bet does not. What does your current moment undervalue? What do the people around you dismiss as impractical? That dismissal is not evidence the bet is wrong. Sometimes, it is the only evidence that the asymmetry is still intact. Right now, thousands of people write online to an audience of almost no one. They publish essays, observations, half-formed ideas. They do this for months, sometimes years. Most never find an audience. Some do, and when they do, the return is staggering relative to the cost. The cost of writing publicly is almost zero. A platform, free. Time, perhaps 2 hours a week. The risk, mild embarrassment if the work is poor, or more likely, simple silence. But the upside is uncapped and deeply strange. A single essay, read by the right person at the right moment, can produce a job offer, a collaboration, a client, a life change the writer could not have engineered directly. And the body of work compounds, each piece raising the probability that the next one lands somewhere unexpected. Most people do not write publicly because the early return is invisible. This is precisely why the asymmetry exists. If the return were obvious, the edge would vanish, the crowd would arrive, the corridor would close. The same principle applies to building a small project, recording a video, making something and attaching your name to it. The The act of making something visible is itself a low-cost, high-optionality bet. You are not gambling on a specific outcome. You are buying exposure to all possible outcomes, most of which you cannot predict and would not have planned. The contemporary asymmetric bet is not about going viral. It is about remaining in the game long enough for the unexpected to find you. There is a third kind of asymmetric bet. It costs nothing material. It risks only the story you tell about yourself. Most people operate inside a quiet self-definition, a sense of what they are permitted to attempt, what kind of person they are, what ambitions belong to them, and which belong to others. This definition is rarely spoken aloud. It lives in the small hesitations, the email not sent, the room not entered, the question not asked. But identity is not fixed, responsive to new information. And a single small act, one that steps outside the rehearsed outline of the self, changes that market. Not dramatically, not immediately, but the person who sends the email they were afraid to send is not identical to the person who didn't. They carry the memory of movement, and that memory makes the next move fractionally easier, the next hesitation fractionally lighter. The asymmetry here is this: the cost of the action is a moment's discomfort, a risk of minor embarrassment, a possible silence in return. The upside, compounded across years of such small unfastenings, is a fundamentally different person, one who expects more, reaches further, and has evidence that the walls are not permanent. This is the bet most people never make, because no one can see the return, because there is no number attached to it, because it requires no money, no skill, no timing, only the willingness to act when every instinct says to wait. Imagine the evening after the move is made. The world carries on indifferent. The air feels unchanged. But somewhere inside, a thread has loosened. There is no applause, no sudden shift in fortune, only a quiet distance from the old version of yourself. A gentle ache, like phantom pain from a limb you no longer need. The cost was small. You absorbed it. You are still here. And the upside, unmeasured, unnamed, still forming somewhere beyond the edge of what you can see, has been set in motion. Not guaranteed, never guaranteed, but possible in a way it was not yesterday. This is the only arithmetic that matters. Small loss, absorbed. Large gain, alive in the distance. Asymmetry is not a secret. It is a structure, one that exists in markets, in careers, in the private decisions no one else witnesses. The options trader knows it. The accountant who learned computers in 1980 knew it. The person writing into silence, making something visible when the return is invisible, they know it too, even if they cannot name it. The corridor does not require force to escape. It requires a different kind of bet. One where the downside is defined, the upside is open, and the only real cost is the courage to act before the outcome is certain. The walls are not permanent. They only appear that way to those who have never tested them. Night settles, the world remains as it was, silent, unmoved. But beneath the surface, 3 small bets are already in motion. Their outcomes unknown, their structure sound, and somewhere, a person who is afraid to move has already moved.